Boca Tov. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Let's settle into our learning this morning and start just by taking a couple of deep breaths so that we can be present and focused on our learning and leave behind whatever it was that urged us or potentially aggravated us before we got to this moment. So just inviting in 3 deep breaths in through your nose and exhaling through your mouth, even with a sigh. If you are brave enough to really let it out, it might sound like this. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od. Gesher tsar me'od, gesher tsar me'od, kol ha'olam kulo, gesher tsar me'od, gesher tsar me'od. V'ha'ikar, lo lefached, lo lefached klal, v'ha'ikar, lo lefached klal. All of the world is a narrow bridge. All of the world is a narrow bridge. And the most important thing is not to fear. These words come from Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. All of the world is a narrow bridge, and the most important thing is not to fear. How timely and appropriate are these words? Thinking about our connectivity to one another, the world really is a narrow bridge. And the most important thing is not to be caught up in the fear. How do we do that? Well, you come to Temple Bethel's class on joy and calm in the midst of uncertainty and chaos, right? If it could just be that easy, show up for a class and poof, the fear dissipates. Well, we're gonna try. Hopefully last week there were some tools and tips that were shared from the Ba'al Shem Tov. And this morning, oh yes, I saw somebody doing smile push-ups. Yeah, excellent. Remember, you can't be upset or aggravated when you are smiling. And if you can't smile, you just force yourself to smile. So great. Glad that was a helpful, or at least something that was remembered from last week. So this week we're going to be looking at some teachings from Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, one of my personal favorites. We're going to do a brief bio, and then we'll get into some of his teachings. So Rebbe Nachman of Breslov is the great-great-grandson of the Ba'al Shem Tov. He has been gone for several hundred years. He died in 1810 And even after his passing, he still has followers that are in the tens of thousands. He was born in 1772, 12 years after the Ba'al Shem Tov died, in the western Ukrainian town of Medebuzh. He had two brothers and a sister. And as you might imagine, because of his lineage, there were always Chassidic masters that were coming to his home to stay and to visit. And he became deeply inspired by these teachers. Excuse me. He acquired his first disciple on his wedding day in 1785. And then after he got married, he moved to another Eastern town. He traveled a bit over the years. He actually made a trip to the Holy Land, right? That would be to Eretz Yisrael in following the years 1798 to 1799. And it always just gives me such pause to think, like, that was really a schlep, right? He wasn't hopping on a plane. It was probably that's why they are dated for a year journey, that it was quite a journey, and yet so important to him to make it to the land of Israel. Once he returned, about in the year 1800, there was another chassid, another religious leader, who was mounting a bitter campaign in opposition of the kind of chassidut that Rebbe Nachman was professing, which we'll get to in a minute. But in any event, it forced him in 1802 to move to the town of Breslov. And once he moved to this town of Breslov, he came across another individual, another rabbi, whose name was Rebbe Nachman, who would become incredibly instrumental. And if it really was not for Rebbe Nachman, we would not have the teachings of Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. He is the one who became his scribe and recorded his teachings and his conversations, helping to share with us all of this wisdom and insight that Rebbe Nachman was sharing with his disciples. Now, what was special about Rebbe Nachman's teaching, some of you may be familiar with his storytelling. And if you're not, I would encourage you to check out some of those stories. If we have time at the end of the class, I have two personal favorites that I would love to share with you. But he would use teaching of the Torah because people wouldn't always understand the messages, and tell stories about it so that the average person could really understand more of, who doesn't understand a good story, right? If you understand a story, it's in much more digestible information. So Rebbe Nachman would take very deep, esoteric, hidden, secret meanings of the Torah and translate them into stories. And that was the way that he helped to transmit this Jewish knowledge. Now, one other piece of information which I find fascinating, you might also have heard that teachers teach what they need to learn themselves. So Rebbe Nachman speaks a lot about joy, a lot about dancing, a lot about simcha. And the reason was that he suffered greatly from depression. And I always find it so fascinating that even in the midst of his really deep, dark state of being, he was able to teach and acknowledge and help put forth how to not sink into a depression. And he was really speaking first person. So his teachings on joy that we're going to look at later, for me, resonate in a very different way, right? It came from this place of, I've been there. I understand what it means to be in a depressed state. And so here's what I do, or here's what I imagine, or here's what might be able to help each of us move from that space where it's feeling very dark to a place of light. In 1807, Rebbe Nachman lost his wife, who was the mother of their 8 children, to tuberculosis. And shortly thereafter, he also contracted tuberculosis. And he fought it for 3 years, eventually succumbing to his death in 1810, where he had moved once again to the town of Uman. And he gave over his last teaching on Rosh Hashanah in 1810, and then he passed away a few weeks later at the age of 38. He was very, very young. And, I just oftentimes think about the amount of wisdom that was generated in his 38 years, I'm so grateful for, and I can't help but wonder what else could have possibly come out if he had lived a longer life. He had 2 sons and a daughter who died in infancy, and he was survived by 4 daughters. So there was no one to succeed him as his, as the leader when he died. And so there is no sort of lineage in terms of Rebbe Nachman's line. However, because of Reb Nosson and all of the teachings that he had written down, there are hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of Breslovers, they're called, Breslover Chassidim, that follow Rebbe Nachman's teachings. So I want to move on to his life lessons, but I'm feeling very called to take a detour and just share one of his stories, because I think it really gets to the heart of who he was. And I hope that it'll inform how we can understand his teachings. Are any of you familiar with a story called The Turkey Prince? All right, ready to hear it? Once upon a time, there was a prince who became mad and thought that he was a turkey. He felt compelled to sit under the table, pecking at bones and pieces of bread like a turkey. All of the royal physicians tried to cure him, but they could not find a cure that would help this prince move from the table and stop acting like a turkey. Finally, the royal physicians all gave up hope, and the king was grieving tremendously. One day, a sage arrived and said, "I will take care of it. I will cure him." The king couldn't imagine what this sage was going to do any differently than his physicians had tried for many, many years. The sage undressed and sat naked under the table next to the prince, who was picking crumbs and bones. "Who are you?" asked the prince, "and what are you doing here?" "And you?" said the sage, "what are you doing here?" "I am a turkey," said the prince. "I am also a turkey," answered the sage. They sat together like this for some time until they became good friends. And one day, the sage signaled the king's servants to throw him some shirts. He said to the prince, "What makes you think that a turkey can't wear a shirt? You can wear a shirt and still be a turkey." And with that, the two of them put on shirts. And after a while, as their friendship continued to grow, the sage again signaled and asked that somebody throw him some pants. As before, he asked the prince, "What makes you think you can't be a turkey if you wear pants?" The sage continued in this manner until they were both completely dressed. Then he signaled for regular food from the table. The sage asked the prince, "What makes you think that you'll stop being a turkey if you eat good food? You can eat whatever you want to eat and still be a turkey." And they both ate the food. Finally, the sage says, "What makes you think a turkey must sit under the table? Even a turkey can sit at the table." The sage continued in this manner until the prince was completely cured. Any remarks or thoughts or comments about that story? What you think the message was? I think you have to unmute yourself if you're going to answer.
Well, somebody else. I was going to say that you are what you think you are. So if you think well of yourself, then you can be whomever.
Great. Yes. So our thoughts, in essence, create our reality. Right? Our thoughts create what we do in the world, how we see ourselves in the world. Anyone else?
Another one would be that he did one step at a time to get better, and gradually he was better, but one little step made another step easier.
Exactly. One step at a time, right? We're not going to fix everything at once. We're not going to wake up one day and have all our anxiety or fear be gone, or all of our negative thoughts, or whatever it is, all of our insecurities, all of our impatience, whatever it is. It's a process, right? Like, let's be kind to ourselves and say, today I'm going to do this one step and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yes, Roberta.
Today, wouldn't we call it behavior modification?
Behavior
Change.
modification.
And so if you make yourself smile eventually, you might be happy.
Yes, keep leading ourselves down that path, and eventually something will shift.
I think it was like a mirror image when the Prince Turkey met the sage, and they just mirrored each other. He mirrored his feelings with him, and he didn't leave him until he was cured.
Yeah, so really being able to sit with people, right? How are we able to sit with people and to meet them where they are and not leave? Yes.
I was going to say also that it's to communicate with people, you need to talk at their level, which is what he did. You need to be on their level and speak to them at their level, and they're more apt to listen to you.
Exactly. Great. Wonderful insights. Now I hope you understand why it's one of my favorite Rebbe Nachman stories, because it's so rich on so many levels. And it's a good reminder for us in all of the ways that you have all mentioned. So now I want to move to the official text study part of the program. I'm going to share my screen, which I hope you can all see. Yeah, are you all able to see this? At least a thumbs up or yes. Oh, okay. Great. So the first song in the box are just the words, in case you are not familiar with them. All of the world is a narrow bridge, and the most important thing is not to fear. So a few life lessons that come from Rebbe Nachman. You are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. Thoughts or comments about that? You are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be.
A comment is that you're the master of your day. If you want to have a great day, you're driving the ship. If it doesn't go so great, you must not be driving it good. You need to drive better. That's what I think.
All right. I agree, although it does feel like it's putting a little bit of pressure on us. So I just want to throw that out there, right? You know, we do our best, the best that we can. And sometimes it doesn't always go 100%, which still I hope allows for self-compassion, right? You know, we are where our thoughts are. So when we're talking about specifically for this course, looking at finding joy and calm in the midst of uncertainty and chaos, if one wants to find joy and calm, then where are your thoughts in relationship to that?
So isn't this the power of positive thinking?
Yes. I think that could be one way to describe it, right? But the power of positive thinking, however, I think his is pretty neutral, right? You are wherever your thoughts are.
Yeah.
Right.
So
in theory, if one would like to be in a calm place, then perhaps, you know, having a discipline of waking up in the morning, doing some deep breathing, having a mantra or a statement that is easily accessible, whatever it is for you, right? Like, I am calm, I am peaceful, I am calm, I am peaceful. So when you're in those moments where we're actually not feeling calm and peaceful, we have it, as Roberta sort of said, like it's in our muscle memory, right? It's in our hard drive, so that we go into a state of reciting our mantra. I am calm. I am peaceful. I am calm. I am peaceful. And whatever it is for each of you, to come up with something in advance so that you're prepared, right? When you're out there, imagine yourself on a surfboard and you're an amazing surfer, right? We're all going to use our imaginations, because I don't know if I've ever been on a surfboard and has been able to stand. So we're just all going to use our imaginations that we are amazing surfers, right? And we're on our surfboard and the water starts getting rough and there are waves that are coming onto the board. And how do we navigate that, right? We have to be prepared for moving into the wave and allowing it to happen and not fighting. So how do we get our minds into that space as well? How do we have these thoughts, and instead of, fighting up against it, like, what's wrong with you? Why are you thinking that way? Why are you feeling that way? A little less judgment and a little more compassion, and say, thank you for the thought. You're not helpful. I am peaceful and I am calm. I am peaceful and I am calm. So I would really invite each of you to come up with a line, a sentence, a phrase, a word, maybe an image. Perhaps you're visual, and being at the beach and seeing the rolling waves, calm and gentle, might create that sense of calm and joy in yourself. Or maybe it is, I don't know, whatever your hobby is, whipping up a nice souffle in the kitchen that allows you to just feel calm and accomplished and joyful. So I would invite each of you to find whatever it is, your mantra or your image, that can help you take your thoughts to where you want to be. So this next one made me smile, and I was curious what you would have to say about how this deals with finding joy and calm in the midst of uncertainty and chaos. So whenever possible, avoid eating in a hurry. Even at home, don't gobble up your food. Eating is an act of holiness. It requires full presence of mind. So how might that impact the joy and calm that we can find in our own lives?
Well, right away, I think about one's digestive system and the process of putting the food in the mouth, chewing, swallowing. In a calm way, it goes fluidly. Fluidity is involved. If you're rushing and it's not a process like it should be, because all the nutrients don't get absorbed like they should.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yes.
Yep.
It really is mindfulness, isn't it? Paying attention, close attention to what you are doing in that moment.
Yes.
It took me back years ago, actually 72. I had dinner in a Zen monastery in Japan, and they ate in total silence, except that they slurped their noodles, and you were supposed to do it very noisily.
So the slurping almost like became intentionality.
Yes.
Right? You were mindfully slurping your noodles. I love
Yes.
Yes. So this sense of mindfulness, of slowing down, of paying attention. And I think that there's something to it, especially with our food, right? Most of us eat, if we're lucky, 3 meals a day. And so it allows us a moment of pause, right? It allows us time to slow down. So that if we're sitting and we're eating, I'll share a pet peeve, and then I hope I don't offend anybody after I share what my pet peeve is. So I apologize in advance. But it drives me crazy when I see people shoving food in their mouth when they're driving. Right? Like I am equally as guilty, and I have done it, but it's like, could you just sit for 5 minutes? Like just eat your food. not in your car, right? And I think why it bothers me so much is because of this teaching that eating is an act of holiness. And there's so much involved in the eating process that we don't always take into account. Where did our food come from? Who grew our food? What kind of soil was used? Were there pesticides and chemicals? Who picked the food? Who transported the food? Who packaged the food? Who drove the food to the warehouse, to the distribution center? Who took it to the grocery store? Who unpacked it from the grocery store? Who put it on the shelf? Like, there's such an enormous chain of events that need to happen in order for us to receive our food. And for me personally, when I sit and I just, chomp it, gobble it down, as it says here, without thinking about it and offering thanks for all of those pieces that needed to happen. For me personally, it doesn't provide as fulfilling of a meal. So if I sit down, I take a moment, extend gratitude, think about the sun and the soil and the people and everything that needed to happen in order to bring the food to the table, and how fortunate I am to have food, it truly is transformed into an act of holiness. I hope that it can serve as a way to provide joy and gratitude. And if we're able to do it in a calm way, chewing our food, letting it digest, that it has an opportunity to provide a sense of calm several times a day in the midst of uncertainty and chaos. Yes.
Two things about eating. One is we look out for where we eat. We're in a condo. We look out at water and greenery and birds and that's been lovely, especially during these times. So you can look out and it's very peaceful while you're eating. But the other thing is what you're talking about at the table. If we discuss politics at the table, that just gets us both all riled up. So we try to avoid that. I think it's important what you're talking about, in addition to the thankfulness, which is really important also. I like that. So that's what we try and do. We avoid certain topics and try to keep it peaceful while we're eating.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sort of goes back to the first teaching, right? Wherever your thoughts are,
right.
Figure out where you want to be. So if you know that a certain topic is going to rile you up, maybe not a good choice if you want to be having a calm meal.
Right.
Right. Any other thoughts about eating and finding this mindful way of ingesting our food? All right. If not, yeah.
Besides eating now, taking it one step further, all of us are in our kitchens much more than we have been prior to this pandemic. And so there's the preparation of the food and what goes into it that we're all much more aware of now.
Yes. That is very true. Chopping vegetables is a lot of work, right? Yeah. It's nice to have a sous chef if that's a possibility, right? It's a lot easier when someone else does the chopping and the cleaning if it's possible, right? But it's a lot. If you're on your own, you know how much is involved in food prep. So, another option is to put music on or listen to a podcast that will not ut you, right? A podcast that will be calming, right? So to really be discerning in what you choose to listen to, right? It's not just the kind of food that we put into our bodies that nourish our bodies physically, but the kind of information we put into our minds that are either nourishing or not nourishing our mental and emotional state. So speaking of that state, we'll move to the next teaching, and that is always look for the good in the other. Focus on that good, highlight it, and turn even sinner into saint. Always look for the good in yourself. Focus on that good, highlight it, and turn even depression into joy. So what I particularly appreciate about this teaching is a reminder that we also need to look for the good in ourselves, right? We spend a lot of time, I imagine, if you are a person that is looking to improve yourself or to learn more or to expand your knowledge in some way and to make the world a better place, right? Tikkun olam, we're told that our job as Jews is to be a light into the nation and make the world a better place and go out and find the good in the other. And I think oftentimes we skip over the finding the good in yourself. So I'm going to give each of you an assignment for 30 seconds or a minute, and I want you to think about the qualities in yourself that you are most proud of. What are the qualities in yourself that you love about yourself?
I'm ready.
All right. So if you're comfortable sharing, I will invite you to either share your quality or 2 or 3 or 4 that you love about yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing, you can put it in the chat. So I'm going to ask you just to continue down that path. If people just want to prefer writing in the chat, that's fine. On my screen share, I don't have the ability to see many of you or the chat. So I'm going to wait another few seconds. And if I don't hear anybody speaking, I will assume that you wrote in the chat.
Okay, my husband just said to me that I am very dependable. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it and I follow through. And the other thing about me is that I feel that I'm a strong person, that I can really deal with most adversity. So those, I think, are my 2 good qualities.
2 good qualities that you've named. I would
Yeah.
I would believe that you have more than 2 good qualities.
Thank you. Those, yes, you're correct. Those are the 2 I'm willing to name online.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will look forward to reading the chat when I stop sharing my screen. Was there someone else who was going to speak?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Maddie, and what I love most is to live life. So I would say this quality that I have is enthusiasm, passion to participate and learn and grow and be part of the stream, and to, do it with joy. So I guess maybe that's what's getting me through this whole thing, to look forward to that.
Yeah.
But ever since I can remember, that was that thread that, kind of shaped who I was in my decisions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's a perfect segue to our next topic, which is joy. And we see this enthusiastic person jumping. Was there someone else who was going to speak? Okay. All right. So Rebbe Nachman of Breslov on joy. Always remember, joy is not incidental to your spiritual quest. It is vital. So I'm going to read all of these, and then we're going to talk about which quote speaks to you the most. Nothing is as liberating as joy. It frees the mind and fills it with tranquility. Finding true joy is the hardest of all spiritual tasks. If the only way to make yourself happy is by doing something silly, then do it. If despite your desire to be happy, you feel down, draw strength from happier times gone by. Eventually, joy will return. Get into the habit of singing a tune. It will give you new life and fill you with joy. Get into the habit of dancing. It will displace depression and dispel hardship. So I'm going to give you a minute or so to read those quotes to yourself and pick the one that resonates with you the most this morning. We'll take another 30 seconds of think time for people, and then we can start discussing. You all ready?
Sure.
Okay, so if you are comfortable, I will invite you to share which of these quotes is speaking to you most brilliantly this morning. All right.
Well, I'll start. Number 4, if despite your desire to be happy, you feel down, draw strength from happier times gone by. During this entire 11 weeks, I have gone through the many photo albums that I have done throughout the years because I was very into scrapbooking when my children appeared and family life started with me and my family. But then I also was helping my mother organize all the photos that she had from her life. And I put them in albums with labels and identifying what the photos were about. And we spent a lot of time together talking. I'm very pleased that I had that time with Mom to do that. And I have all these albums. And she's in assisted living. And when I do FaceTime with her, lots of times I'll make videos of her and her mother and father and her brother and sister and the family times that we had. And that brings a smile to her face and mine too, because there's so many family memories.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And just, you know, a shout out to the importance of memory, right? And an acknowledgement of the gift for those of us who have working memories and who are able to remember that we oftentimes take for granted. So just a pause and a great acknowledgement and a thanks for the power of memory and how we are able to take ourselves back to those times, right? It almost feels like, you know, we could be transported to another time, even though we are in this chronological moment in time. The power of memory allows us to go back and really feel like we were there. If you are able to conjure up the sounds and the smells and who was with you and what the environment was like, and just, you know, an acknowledgement of the power and importance of memory. I saw Roberta had her hand up, and then I'll call on Carol afterwards.
Okay. music does that also. I wanted to go to number 6, get into the habit of dancing, because a couple of years ago, I started taking tap dance classes.
Oh,
I never did it as a kid.
it's fun.
And listening, just hearing the music and making my feet move to it made me so happy. I mean, I was really conscious of it in the moment. And the dance studio where I did it has a sign on the wall that says, dancing is like dreaming with your feet.
That's good.
And I'm hoping that you will comment about the origins of Hasidism and use the role that music and dancing has in the whole movement, as opposed to the intellectualism that it was rebelling against. That's
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I will try to do that towards the end. Remind me, if not, we can take it offline.
Thank
But
you.
I'll just say one quick sentence because I want to make sure at least I give you a small answer, if not a more detailed answer. A lot of the participation in the Chassidic world came from simple folk, right? There wasn't that understanding or the intellectual prowess in the mitnagdim, right? In the more intellectual crowd. And so one way that regular folk can express themselves without having that connection to the details of Talmudic discussions is through dance and through song. And so it was really a way to bring people together. And I think that these Hasidic masters also understood the deep spiritual, mystical, energetic shifts that happen when people are dancing and when people are singing, right? It alters us in a different way. And I believe that the Chassidic masters were aware of that and wanted to also help transport people to a different time and different place, right? Like, as you said, dancing, streaming with your feet. So if you're stuck in a time period that's incredibly painful and a lot of suffering and pogroms and hunger, that if you can get people dancing and elevate themselves and elevate their spirit to a different place, they have the potential to dream in a different way. So that's my short answer. And I wanted to call on Carol, who I know was waiting. You're muted.
I picked number 3. Finding true joy is the hardest of all spiritual tasks. If the only way, can you turn that down? I can. If the only way to make yourself happy is by doing something silly, do it. So in my family growing up, humor is very important. My mother went through the war in London and her family was hysterical because that's how they got around it, by making humor. And a lot of them are dead now. But my immediate family, when I want to laugh, which changes my mood, I call up my sisters and we laugh about things. And I have several girlfriends that I call up. And I think humor is very important. It's important to me to be able to be silly. Sometimes you need to be silly because everything we're going through now is pretty much serious. You need to counteract it by doing something different and doing something that's going to make you laugh. Watching stuff on TV that makes you laugh also is another good way.
Yes, thank you. Totally agree. Yeah, my husband and kids have a very different sense of humor than I do. And they like to watch all of these, what I would consider extremely inappropriate roasts on Comedy Central, right? That it's like, I just don't think it's funny. But what I do appreciate is hearing them laugh. So even if I don't get the joke, right, like that's part of it, is I just don't get it, and they'll be laughing hysterically, which just makes me laugh. So, you know, another similar event is when people send videos of laughing babies or post them on social media. I don't know if any of you have seen them, but it's virtually impossible to be in a bad mood and watch one of these videos, right? There is something contagious about laughter, that when you hear laughter,
I don't know
You
how to
just
turn
feel
it
like you're laughing yourself.
on my art. Here, let me-
All right. Yes, I see Hank.
Like puppy videos on YouTube. Really good for me.
If some, whoever's not talking, if
Could
you
you
could
lower
please
your volume?
mute.
I can't turn.
We're having trouble lowering the volume. It's blocking our way to do that. So I'll talk low. Okay. One of the things for me is dancing. My father taught me to dance when I was in the 6th grade, and it made me a social star. And I've always gotten satisfaction from that. But if you see me in temple on a Shabbat, I'm beating the book and I'm dancing in my seat. And I find it a way of really releasing. The other thing is doing things that make me comfortable, or sitting at the beach, or putting myself walking through the woods. Yeah, and that makes me happy. If I'm depressed, I'll put my mind there, and it relaxes me.
Great, beautiful. Yes, that's the
Okay,
last
I'm
question,
a
which if
dancing
we had
fool.
time, I wanted to get to. So what do you do when you're feeling down? And you just answered that, the beach or for a walk, nature. Anyone else want to share which of Rebbe Nachman's teachings on joy spoke to you the most? Yes, Sheila,
Okay, am I muted?
you are unmuted.
Thank you. For me, I guess it's number 5, because I've been singing in my temple choir for over 50 years. And although I am a choir member and not a soloist, as we know the difference, I just find a great deal of joy and spirituality in singing in this group of men and women, and singing the liturgy, and really, I find it very joyful and very spiritual to sing with them.
Yes.
I'm kind of sad this year, though, because unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have a choir because of this pandemic. Supposedly, I understand that singing puts out more droplets into the air than just about any other beside a cough or sneeze.
Yes, I sadly heard that as well.
Mhm.
So you'll have to sing by yourself for a while.
Yes.
Or you can, maybe do some karaoke and put somebody else in the background and sing with them. But yeah, there is definitely something about singing that is very moving and joy evoking, especially in a choir setting.
Yes.
Any other thoughts that you would like to share?
Yes, I'd like to say something.
Yes.
I like 5 and 6. 5 is something new that I got acquainted with recently. I would always enjoy music, but I wouldn't really sing. And I started singing. I sing in the temple services, but of course, I started singing to music in my car. It is so wonderful. I sing along. It's the greatest. It's so energizing. And I know from psychology that when you sing, your mind can't focus on another thought because you're focused on the singing. So that's what makes it great. And 6, I think dancing is also wonderful. It releases endorphins. Both of them remind me of being more childlike, and that's always terrific. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the challenges that I offer, perhaps I'm not sure if it was to this group or another group, since I've been doing a bunch of teaching, but it involves dancing. Did we talk about that last week? Did I give you your assignment to go into a closed room and put the music on and dance? I see some shaking head yes, and some shaking head no. So for those of you who heard me say that, you'll have to hear me say it again. And for those of you who didn't hear me say that, I would invite you to challenge yourself to dance. Put on some music that you like. If there is no one else in your house, great. If there's someone you want to invite to dance with you, great. But just for 10, 15, 20 minutes, dance and see how it feels. There is something that happens to the body. It is very good for releasing anxiety, depression, stuck emotions. And so when you move and you dance, all of that energy is actually moving through your body. So that will be an invitation and a challenge if any of you feel up to the task of finding some dance time at least once during this week. And if dancing feels too off-putting or too scary or too uninviting, then I would encourage you to find a song that you love and just sing it and see how you feel. Maybe just a mindful singing lesson, taking note of the fact how you feel before, sing, and then see how you feel after, right? Just checking in. How does your body feel? What's your physical state? Does your physical state feel any different? Does your emotional state feel any different? Does your mental state feel any different? Does your spiritual state feel any different? Singing and dancing are two great ways to help move energy and to move us from a place of uncertainty and chaos and not knowing to a place of joy. And I would offer afterwards calm, right? After we've had the singing or the dancing experience, if we're able to sit and relax, I imagine it's similar to, for those of you who were ever runners, right? You get your runner's high when you are out running, and as much as you might feel like, oh, I just don't feel like exercising. And then after you come back and you're like, wow, I feel so good. So just notice, see how your body feels after you sing or after you dance. Any other thoughts about any of these teachings? All right, so I'm going to stop.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Yeah.
I really, I'm going to do research, because when we spoke about topics during a dinner time to make your dinner more peaceful, calm, and appropriate, it's a great thing to research. So I thank you for talking about that.
Sure. Sure. All right. So thank you all for your sharings. I hope that this morning provided a bit of insight of Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, his teachings about joy, his teachings about where we put our minds and how our thoughts lead us to the state that we are going to be in, whether we realize it or not. So how do we pay attention to what our thoughts are? Right, I think a lot of us might have thoughts, but we don't think about our thoughts. They're just our thoughts. But if we could push pause and think about, right, we're like not feeling so good, like, what was I just thinking about before? Did I just see something on TV that I didn't realize it? Just stop and a noticing, a pause. In the evenings, my husband will offer like, oh, do you want to watch a movie? I'm sure. So we sit down and, he put on some show. It was called Why We Hate. And this was like 9:30 at night. And I'm thinking like, and he's like, I've been saving it because I thought that you'd really want to watch it. It's so interesting. It's like an in-depth psychological study. And there are images of like violence. And I'm like, stop, just stop. Like, just no, it's 9:30 at night, right? So just a noticing of what is being offered to us. So I said, like, I'm good for a romantic comedy. I'm good for, a cooking station. Like we can watch cooking shows at 9:30 at night, but seriously, Why We Hate? Again, I put that out there because sometimes we watch things people suggest or they send a video and say, you have to see this. My daughter yesterday was talking to me about the horrible video that came out of Minnesota. And I just, I want to offer, I know thoughts and prayers are not enough. And I want to offer not only thoughts and prayers, but action that comes from this senseless and horrible murders of Black people for just being Black. So I'm still dealing with that. But anyway, my daughter says to me, I watched the whole video. It was absolutely disgusting. Can I show it to you? And I said, no, right? Like, I know myself well enough that I can't have those images in my mind. I again, am heartbroken and just sickened and disgusted. And I can't put that into my brain as a visual image. So I want to also share that with you. Not that we should turn away in any way, and that's not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is that, of course, we need to act, and there are people who can watch the video, but if you happen to be an extra sensitive soul and watching any sort of images, why we hate TV shows, it doesn't help move you to a place of calm. And so in these really tumultuous times, I would encourage you to find visuals, books, mantras, activities that can bring joy and calm while still holding and recognizing that there is uncertainty and there is chaos, right? One of my favorite teachings in general, a meta teaching of Judaism, is how to hold the dialectic. How do we hold two opposites to be true at the same time? How do we stay in a place of joy and calm and recognize that there is uncertainty and chaos? How do we not watch videos that are going to break our spirit and recognize that sometimes we need to see and hear things that are challenging? They are both true. And part of navigating this world is being able to hold both of those truths while figuring out what works for yourself best. So how do you take care of yourself in a way that will allow you to go out and be present and act in the world? How do you find joy and calm so that we can go serve? I think that's a question for each of us. Each of us will have different answers. I'm hoping that the teaching from this course over the past 2 weeks, the teachings from the Ba'al Shem Tov about living in joy and creating joy and finding joy, and the teachings of his great grandson, Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, can resonate for us in a time that is incredibly challenging. So we'll conclude with his words, Kol haolam kulo, gesher tsar me'od, gesher tsar me'od, gesher tsar me'od, Kol haolam kulo, gesher tsar me'od, gesher tsar me'od. V'ha'ikar, lo lefached klal. V'ha'ikar, lo lefached klal. All of the world is a narrow bridge, and the most important thing is to not fear. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm reading in the chat that there is a request for some more Rebbe Nachman of Breslov stories. So if you Google Rebbe Nachman of Breslov stories, just ask Rav Google. Rav Google knows it all. For those of you that need to sign off, I want to be respectful of your time. And for those of you that can stay on for a few more minutes, I'm happy to share one more Rebbe Nachman story. And it goes like this. Let me see if I can. Okay, it's called The Tainted Grain. The king's stargazer saw that the grain harvested that year was tainted. Anyone who would eat from it would become insane. What can we do? Said the king. It is not possible to destroy the crop, for we don't have enough grain stored to feed the entire population. Perhaps, said the stargazer, we should set aside enough grain for ourselves. At least that way we could maintain our sanity. The king replied, if we do that, then we'll be considered crazy. If everyone behaves one way and we behave differently, we'll be considered not the normal ones. Rather, said the king, I suggest that we too eat from the crop, like everyone else. However, to remind ourselves that we are not normal, we will make a mark on our foreheads. Even if we are insane, whenever we look at each other, we will remember that we are insane. Powerful, timely. Any thoughts or remarks, comments about that Rebbe Nachman teaching about the tainted grain?
Always know who you are. Don't ever forget who you are, even in the worst of circumstances or the best of circumstances. Remember to stay grounded in your normal.
Yes, thank you. Know who you are. And also, I think a sense of knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Right? Like, recently I was talking to a friend of mine who has been very careful and quarantining and sheltering in place. And she happened to be at an event for her child who's graduating. And lots of people were getting together and taking pictures, and they weren't 6 feet apart. And she shared with me, like, I felt a real sense of peer pressure to be in that photo. And I think there is an element in this story of peer pressure and being sucked in and doing something that you might not feel comfortable doing, but at least putting a mark on your forehead to know that you're doing this for whatever reason, right? Peer pressure or a job or a relationship or whatever it is that you are doing something for, but to be knowledgeable and to know the core of who you are and recognize that there might not be something that feels, 100% okay, but that there is a different story out there. So I think this is a challenging time, especially when we read news, watch news, hear things, we don't know what to believe. We don't know what's true. We don't know what is really fake news, what is being called fake news, how do we discern, and how do we not eat the tainted grain, or know that we have no choice but to eat the tainted grain, but we're still gonna connect to ourselves and acknowledge that we understand there's the discrepancy here. So lots of deep teachings from Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. There are also additional wonderful stories that I'm sure you can find online. Thank you for being here this morning. Be safe, wear your mask, take care, be healthy. Have a great day and have a wonderful, meaningful Shavuot, which will start this evening. Temple Bethel will be offering programs this evening as well as a service tomorrow morning. All of that information is on the web. So as we say, Chag Shavuot Sameach, have a happy Shavuot and eat a piece of cheesecake. Bye-bye. Thank you to the producers, Amanda and Isabella, and have a happy Shavuot.